Okay, welcome everybody to our March Legacy Loop. It's lovely to see you all here. It's great to run these sessions for our charity partners, and we're building up some a really good host of useful resources. Today we're joined by Oliver Asher and Sarah Husband, and they will introduce themselves properly shortly. I've got a few non-partners who have joined us, which is great, and I'll be in touch afterwards to let you know more about Make a Will Online and how we sort of help charities. A quick mention about our next Legacy Loop session, which is on Wednesday, the 24th of April, and this is going to be on integrating AI into your strategy, a balanced view. And that's going to be presented by Mary Camp from Simpler with AI. And it's going to be an interactive session where we'll be delving into practical ways you can utilise Chat GPT, aligning with unique demands and ethical considerations for the charity sector. So I'll pop the invite into the chat later on. So if you want to sign up for that, that would be great. And then just a bit of housekeeping. So questions, we want to try and make the session as interactive as possible. So if you've got any questions, just shout out basically. But if you don't want to do that, you can put them in the chat. There is a section at the end for questions. So we'll make sure that we cover everything. So over to you, Oliver and Sarah.
Okay, do a very quick round of introductions for myself and Sarah, and then we'll dive straight in. So my name's Oliver. I'm the head of legal at Make a Will Online. I'm also a solicitor and trust and estate practitioner, and I oversee all of the delivery of wills that we make for our partner charities. Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a private client lawyer with Digilegal. I work with Oliver. I'm a chartered legal executive and mostly deal with estate administration as well as advising on wills, powers of attorney. And with the will side of things, of course, naturally that comes with having charity beneficiaries, executors, and having that contact with them throughout the probate process as well.
Okay. So let's kick off and talk about what's in a will, presented by Legacy Loop. This is hopefully going to have aspects of interactivity. I'm going to ask a few questions, and there's going to be room for discussion, especially when it comes through to typical conversations that you as legacy fundraisers have with your supporters who are thinking about making a will. That's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to be talking and providing information for people who've approached you with an interest in making a will, and also delve into some of the reasons that people might feel a little bit hesitant about going ahead and turning their intentions to make a will and leave a gift in their will to their favourite charity. What resistance, what pushbacks, what questions and what blockers people have. So let's talk about what's in a will, and so what? Why, as legacy fundraisers, gifts in wills fundraisers, do you need to know what's in a will? Just to before we start, so that we know where all our buttons are and things, I might ask for a show of hands at some point during the process. Does everybody know how to? Well, if you've got your video on, just stick your hand up. If you haven't, have you got the button to pop your hand up if we do a little straw poll as we go through? Yes, thank you, Hannah. Yeah, perfect, Rachel. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, we've got at least a few. Have got that. Brilliant, super. So, what is in a will, and why might that matter to a legacy fundraiser? I'm going to start with an often quoted stat and talk about what it means to you. And that stat is from 8 to 11%. We all know numbers, especially with no context. Putting a bit of context around that, 8 to 11% is the number of people over the last few years, typically, who die and their wills go through probate, and there's a gift in their will to their favourite charity. So 8 to 11% roughly accounts for around about £3 or £4 billion money to the charity sector. That is amazing, and that is all you, the people in this room, having discussions around gifts and wills. What we want to achieve, the gap that we're trying to get with this, is through to 40 to 50%. Now, we work with fundraising consultants who've workshopped well over 40 or 50,000 people over their careers. When they speak with their charity supporters, they're told by those supporters.
Just one second, Oliver. Martha's put something in the chat saying it's difficult to hear. Is it okay now, Martha? Can you hear okay? Can everybody else hear okay?
It's a bit better, yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, super. I'll try and enunciate and speak to the back of the room, like all the experts say. So 40 to 50%. 40 to 50% is the number of people who say that they would like to leave a gift in their will. And the other 50 or 60%, they don't want to. They want to support their favourite causes in different ways, and that's absolutely fine. A friend of the family of mine, when I was talking about the work that I do, said, "Oh, I'd rather give with a warm hand than a cold one." And that's coming from somebody who gives their time as a volunteer, who gives their monthly subscriptions. I think they cycled, do cycle challenges and things. Brilliant, fantastic. Don't want to change their mind. We're talking about 40 to 50% of people who want to leave a gift in their will. The information that we give you today is aimed at empowering you to have better conversations with those people, to understand what common pushbacks there might be, understand what's in the will, understand exactly what it is that you are asking them when you're talking about leaving a gift in your will. So, in order to make a will and therefore put a gift into it, what does a supporter need to know? Sarah.
Okay, so of course, as charities and supporters, neither of you are normally, unless you have in a past life, been involved with actually drafting the will. So why do you need to know what actually goes into it, what a supporter needs to think about? Well, on a surface level, it's good for you to know so that when a supporter comes to you and perhaps isn't sure about making a will, has various reasons for why they haven't done it before, or maybe they have made one years ago and they don't know how to change it. It's good for you to at least understand what they are thinking about and what they need before they actually get to that stage of making a will. And while a lot of people do think that's quite complicated, essentially it's only 3 simple things that a supporter needs to know when they're making a will. They don't need to know the ins and outs of how it's drafted and all the individual terms, because quite often they will have somebody explain that to them. But the 3 simple things that they need to know, among their, as well as their own personal details, which of course that's fine. One is their family details, and that's normally those closest to them, those who they are financially supporting, or people who are financially supporting them as well. Number 2 would be people who they want to leave a gift to in a will, their beneficiaries. So hopefully that will include yourselves as charities as well. They don't need to know, again, sometimes the ins and outs of how that gift will work. Just they need to know those details. And if they don't have all the charity details, of course, they can ask you for that. Then last but not least, we need to know about their estate. So if somebody has a property in the south of France, or they have a trust fund with sort of £500,000 tucked away somewhere, we would need to know about that. We don't need to know the latest valuations. They haven't got to call all the banks and ask for the latest statements. They don't need to contact an estate agent and ask for a valuation. And we don't need things like account numbers, or really even to know who they bank with, or who their utility providers are with, or credit card. We just need to know that they have a rough understanding of what they've got to give away. So now that we know what they have put to hand before they make a will, we'll have a look at what a will looks like on the face of it from start to finish. So first of all, I'm assuming a lot of you have seen a will before. We've got the full name and address of the supporter making the will. Regardless of whether it is their first will or not, it will normally include a clause revoking any previous wills. And it's normally revoking all wills that they've previously made, but again, if they do have a property in the south of France, maybe they have a French will and they don't want to revoke that will, so it can go into quite a bit of detail with that. After the revocation, we normally have some funeral wishes. Again, could be very simple. It could be just going as far as I want to be buried or cremated, or we could have chapter and verse on those funeral wishes, what songs you want to be played, and things like in memory gifts, especially if they're looking to leave that to a charity as well. Can we have a show of hands for who deals with in memory gifts and funeral donations? Brilliant. Yeah, we've got a couple of you there. Oh, some more popping up. Brilliant. So again, whilst those can be included in a will, sometimes they're not, and I'm guilty as well as a lot of other will lawyers at not asking that question if they want to leave any in memory gifts as well, and it is something that we need to do more of. After the funeral wishes, we come on to things like guardians and executors. So guardians are the people who you trust to look after any minor children before the age of 18, should you pass away while they are still a child. And the same as executors. Now, executors, again, are quite often the same as your guardians, but they are people close to you, either friends or family, or it could be a professional such as a lawyer or an accountant or financial advisor, somebody that you trust to get into the nitty-gritty of your personal estate, your belongings, your finances, so that they can carry out the terms of your will and carry out your wishes as well. Once you've named those people, that bit's a lot more straightforward than the second half of the will. We then come on to legacies, which again is where you guys tend to come in as charity gifts, gifts of money, gifts of property. So again, if we got a show of hands for people who deal with gifts, specific gifts like that, gifts of money, gifts of property, gifts of shares. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so again, those gifts can be straightforward. It could be a gift of £1,000 to a charity, or we could go into quite a bit of detail as to what that legacy is used for as well, any wishes there. Or we can have quite complicated gifts, particularly where property is involved as well, rather than just leaving a house to somebody willy-nilly without any instruction as to either who can live there or how the proceeds are to be used when it's sold. Once we've dealt with any legacies, normally everything that's left will be known as the residuary estate, or a trust fund, seems to be the terminology nowadays, but we'll call it the residuary estate here. So anything that's left is left to either close friends or family members, or again, yourselves as charities as well. And that can be split up in various different ways. You could either leave a specific share, so you could leave a third to A, third to B, and a third to a charity, or you can leave a percentage as well. As long as that percentage all tots up to 100% at the end of the day, then you're all good. And then to make this will work, now that we've included all of those gifts and various assets that the supporter has, we tend to include what's known as the standard provisions. They can be a sort of set document, which we have through the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, which is what a lot of lawyers use, or sometimes it can go into a lot more detail, particularly when you've got trusts involved, whether it's a discretionary trust or you're leaving a half share in the house on trust for a surviving spouse or a child, or if you have a vulnerable beneficiary, maybe they are disabled or they're going through a divorce or a bankruptcy. Again, you can go into chapter and verse on those provisions as well to really make sure that the will works for the supporter and for the beneficiaries.
London roundabout. This train terminates here.
And once you've dealt with the standard provisions,
that you take all your personal belongings with you when you
Just muted Martha there.
okay. Okay, so once we've included those standard provisions, and normally when we include them, it tends to be a one sentence referring to an external set of provisions so that a supporter or yourselves isn't reading through 10, 15 pages of bump. Then we come to the end of the will, which is known as the attestation. And essentially that is recording that the will was signed by the supporter in the presence of two witnesses and that the requirements of the Wills Act are carried out. And again, that can be modified as well if you have a blind or illiterate testator or somebody who's physically incapacitated. That doesn't need to be as straightforward as it normally is either, if needs be. So
Super.
now that we've done that, then do you want me to hand back over to you, Oliver, to have a look at pushbacks? And
Absolutely, that's smooth as you like. I'll step back into the fold. So yeah, thank you for taking us through that. What I'd like to do now is show you what that would look like for a supporter when they're making their will, and specifically what it looks like for a supporter when they're making a will through the Make a Will online platform. In best Blue Peter tradition, here's one I made earlier. When a customer comes to make a will online, the way that we take our instructions before the wills are generated by our system and then checked by one of our solicitors is through a questionnaire, through a web form. Now, here we've got Tony Tester, who lives in a house. They've got entered their own details here. There's no magic there. Once the supporters finished that first page, that's when they come into the Make Will Online system, and that's when we can really help steward them through the process of getting all of their wishes down, getting the gifts that they want, understanding their family, understanding what's in the state and what they need to put into the will. You can see along here, there's effectively 6 pages of questions for them. Only 2 of these, actually, or 3, including your details, need any inputs. The actual process of turning an intention to leave a gift in the will into a will generated by our system can take as little as 10 minutes when people know what they want to do in their will. So we've got on the first question, first page, guardians. Sarah mentioned guardians. They tend to be people that the supporters trust with their children. We've always got more info about what happens. One question we see a lot from supporters, I know we're not quite on pushbacks yet, but I'll mention it now, is I've named some guardians. Do I know as well, so that they can look after my children? The short answer is no, you don't. Because of the standard provisions that we use and all good will makers use, there's a set of powers that are given to the executors to release money from the estate to the guardians so they can look after the well-being and upkeep of the children. That can be anything from school uniforms to holidays, food, upkeep, that sort of thing. People can name, normally it's 2 guardians and possibly a couple of reserves. The residuary gift. Now, this is the key, and we asked who deals with legacies. Hopefully, you all also see residuaries, and I imagine most of you in your day-to-day jobs are talking about people leaving a share of their estate. Now, the language, the best practice language around what exactly to ask for, it changes over time. Get advice from a legacy fundraising consultant about that. I understand no longer are people encouraged to ask for 1% of someone's estate. They're asked for, what people can think is they're comfortable with once their family and other friends are looked after. Here we've got the spouse of T Tester, and also an awesome charity. The awesome charity is getting 10%. Whenever our system generates a residuary gift through our charity partnership scheme, it always defaults to 10%. It's not because it's written in stone, it's just a good number, and that's where inheritance tax mitigation ends. And it's a common amount for people to leave. Specific gifts, you don't have to fill this in. As with the guardianship, you don't have to fill in that either if you don't want to, or if you can't think about it at the time. Specific gifts also, if you don't, anything here is taken out of the residuary. And here we've got a another token gift to a charity called Savings Lives. And £5,000 is a typical amount that we see as a gift in a will. There's peaks a couple of places. Sometimes people leave a few £100s, sometimes people leave around about 5,000. What we've found from our experience and looking at the people's trends is people leave what they're asked for by the charity. So if you're asked for a percentage, people leave a percentage. If you're asked for a specific sum of money, then that sum of money can be given. We always do a bit of anomaly checking. We a little while ago had a charity that were getting lots of gifts of 50 quid, 100 quid, and that was really unusual. We don't want to see too many of those sorts of gifts. Any gift in the will is amazing, but a £40 gift may take way more than that to manage when that gift comes in. We found from that charity that there was some confusion in the messaging on their website around a campaign ask for immediate cash needed for a specific cause, and the messaging around gifts in wills. They untied that, and then they went back to seeing more typical gifts. We've got the executors page. Executor, what's an executor? Whenever we've got a bit of jargon, we've always got a jargon buster. People can find out. People tend to nominate their residuary beneficiaries and maybe a professional executor as well to look after the wishes in their will when they make a gift through our process. It is possible for people to appoint us as a professional executor as well. If someone wants to do that, then there's a triple opt-in. They need to know exactly what they're doing. We don't want people sleepwalking into appointing us without knowing that there would be a cost later on. Then we've got funeral wishes. It's the last page of questions on our website, and you don't have to fill it in. When people are wanting to have collections in memory, it's really important they also communicate that with their family. Sometimes wills are not found and read until after a funeral. It's a good place to put your funeral wishes in, but if a supporter wants to have an in-memory collection, make sure that they communicate that with their family and friends beforehand, so that can be organised and it's not just overseen. And here we've got a gift of a collection for the Philanthropic Trust, another made-up charity, and that is that. So going back to what Sarah was saying about the anatomy of a will, when we're preparing a simple will for a supporter using our system, that is all the information that we need in order to generate that will, or and a flip side of it for a pair of wills on the other if it's needed. So that is the anatomy of a will dealt with. Let me just pop back into here. Before I go on to the next stage about the conversations that legacy fundraisers might have, has anybody got any questions about that? Is there anything in the chat? I can't see the chat because I'm sharing far too many screens at the moment.
Nothing in the chat at the moment.
One thing to mention is if a supporter, we never want to create a funnel that puts all of your supporters through our system if we're working with one of our partner charities. If somebody has complex needs, if they have vulnerable beneficiaries, if they are very wealthy and want to leave large gifts or do a lot of complex inheritance tax planning, we'll talk about signposting when we come to pushbacks, but it's really important that people make the best decision for making their will based on their circumstances and what they're comfortable with when they come to do it. We do have a system that can deal very comfortably with the vast majority of supporters' needs, but there are always cases where speaking with somebody face to face is important. If somebody's not sure, they can always get in touch with us if a supporter has a question of a legal nature, even before they've created their will. That question will be answered by myself or someone in the team who is a fully qualified solicitor or regulated by the SRA. So they will be getting good legal advice if they have a question. If it's me, you know, as a qualified solicitor and trust and estate practitioner, if it's, say, Sarah's 3/4 of the way through her trust and estate practitioner, and she's an affiliate member of Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, currently going through the last module on very, very horrible, gnarly tax questions. And we're very, very happy to signpost people, even if it means they don't make a will through our system. So,
Oliver, sorry to interrupt. We have got a question. So Tony says, can you repeat standard provisions and say where that goes in the Make a Will Online system?
So the standard provisions are a set of clauses that run to, when you type them out in 12 point, run to about 12 pages or so. We used to include them all in our wills up until about 7 or 8 years ago. We've now shortened it and make it with reference to the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners. The Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners are, I think it's safe to say, it's the gold standard of people who are dealing with estate planning, dealing with people's wills, dealing with trusts, dealing with inheritance tax advice. They have put together these standard conditions and they update them from time to time. We're now on the 3rd edition of them. That will go into every will that we create, and it deals with, I've already mentioned, providing funds for minors who are being cared for by a guardian. It deals with what happens if there's any delays and the best care for people's estates. If there's a long time between somebody dying and the eventual distribution for whatever reason, it allows the executors to look after that money the best. It puts all the duties set out on the executors exactly what they need to be doing, and it runs to many pages. Is there anything important, Sarah, that I've missed out that the standard provisions do?
No, not that I can think of. I think the main ones are normally providing funds for children while they're under 18 or over to a parent or guardian, so that the parent or guardian can always look after the funds, and also advancing funds to people. If you have a gift that's left to somebody upon their attaining the age of 30 and they have a genuine need for some of those funds before that age, it does give powers to the executors to release some of those monies over, and then it's all balanced off at the end of the day when that person does turn 30.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, good point about another reason for holding funds for longer periods of time. Thank you, Tony. Right. So now we've empowered you to know exactly what is commonly found in a will. All those clauses, you don't have to worry about the details or the jargon, but there are 3 main things that people need to know before they start the will making process. We turn that into a fully binding legal document. You're not going to do any of that, but what you are going to be having is good conversations with your supporters who are interested in leaving a gift in their will to their favourite charity, leaving a gift in their will to you. I'm going to run through some common ones, and then we're just going to break out into some rooms for you to have a little chat about other things that you've heard, look at them, and then have a general conversation about what pushbacks and pitfalls you tend to come across. And then we can talk about best practice for being able to listen well to your supporters when they're talking about them, understand their needs, and if appropriate, signpost. If appropriate, find out a little bit more about what they need so that they can continue on their journey to leaving a gift in their will, and they don't fall over at that point. So something which we hear in private practice quite a lot, and I imagine people working in gifts in wills fundraising see is it's too complicated. Making a will, it's really complicated. I want to do it, but it's really complicated. Quick show of hands, who's come across that or some variant of it. Fantastic. Oh no. Yeah, it's a common one. It's something even when you're sitting in private practice in a meeting room across from somebody who's there to make their will, you'll still come across it. Other common pitfalls or pushbacks is I don't have the time. I really want to leave a gift in my will to my charity. I don't have the time to do it. We're going to unpack that and find out what it actually means to the supporter, and how you can help steward people through that process, just by listening, very occasionally by signposting, or don't have the money. And again, we're going to unpack that and find out what it means when somebody says, I don't have the money to make a will, and what the pushbacks. And then finally, I really want to leave a gift in my will, but I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what my wishes are or what my wishes should be. I'm going to take a little break here for a 5-minute breakout session. And in that breakout session, I want you to think about what pushbacks you can envisage or what pushbacks you have, and just talk about them in the group, and maybe let us know after the breakout session what sort of thing you take from that, what you do as a next step when you encounter those. Marie, have you got that ready to go?
Yeah, so I'm just going to create 3 breakout rooms, so there'll be about 4 or 5 people in each, and then we're going to give 5 minutes, and then we'll just bring everybody back. Yeah.
We'll come back at 22.
Okay. All right, I'm just going to create those.
Can I have a volunteer from room 1, which was Marsha, Rachel, and Sarah, to just give one pushback which you encounter?
I don't mind kind of going for our group.
Thank you, Sarah.
I say kind of from our side of things, we don't necessarily have pushbacks, but we have more of they just didn't know they could do it for free. And Marsha was saying about the cost, about they didn't know it could be, they all thought it was more expensive than it was.
Oh, fantastic. And do you have a standard response to if you come across those? What would you?
I mean, for me, I just direct them to our free will services and off they go. Marsha mentioned about money supermarket comparison person. I can't remember. Marsha, if you want to speak up, I can't quite remember. But yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking sort of more generally, like family and friends. I've referred them to the Money Saving Expert website because there's quite good information on there. And for when it's come through the charity I work for, often we have a free will program, and people are often very pleasantly surprised. And actually, even if they don't go out, even if they don't use it, it's still not as expensive as they think. I think people think wills cost hundreds and hundreds of pounds, and obviously they don't.
They're worth way more, but they can cost much less. Room 2, that's Claire, Ania, Tony, and Vanessa. Can I have a volunteer? Just is there anything to add to that?
I don't mind. We were actually talking, interestingly, we're saying that often one of the questions we get asked is, well, I've already got a will. So people like, oh, not sure I want to change it. And we're wondering about how you feel about the whole idea of codicils. I know that it can be quite contentious, but obviously it's it's a nice, easy way for a supporter to put you in. But yeah.
I'll come to that in a minute. Yes. So what do you typically say if somebody says, "Oh, I've already got a will," apart from codicils, which I'll just touch on.
Well, what I say is we're with the National Free Wills Network. So I say, well, I can find out whether the solicitor you used before, if you let me have their details, whether they're still part of the network. So you can go back to them and just amend your will. Yeah, I don't mention codicils because, yeah, I know it can be a bit.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And room 3, which is Hannah, Mike, and Olivia.
I'll go happily. Procrastination caused by fear of death, I think, is what we were talking about the most, and people don't like to talk about the topic, so they don't get it done. My personal solution for that is to try and use humour where I can, but that may not work for every charity or every situation, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. So we've covered the money, the cost of the wills, covering already got a will, which isn't something I had up on the board there. Really good points. And well, when we set up Make a Will Online back in the noughties, it was there was 3 things that I saw family suffering because people didn't have wills. And we thought, what are the stoppers? And it's the money, the time, and the reluctance to confront on their own mortality. So we managed to make it a much smoother and quicker process. We managed to make it much more affordable. But yeah, we're still working on that one, Mike. I'm sure we'll get to it. Quick word on codicils. If done properly, they can be very useful. I sometimes see on charity websites codicil that can be downloaded as a Word document. Personally, I'm extraordinarily uncomfortable with those. Charities are not legal services providers. You're not insured if anything goes wrong with them. And a little bit less now, but when I was in private practice in the noughties and early wanties.
Hi, Oliver. Can we just backtrack 1 minute, because Hannah wants to know what a codicil actually is. So can you just
Really
cover
good
that
question.
first? Yeah.
A codicil is an addendum to a will. It tends to be one sheet, and it tends to revoke part of an existing will and add something to a part of an existing will. And they were used heavily before word processing. Now you can create a whole will as easily as you can create a codicil. A lot of disputes happen, or a lot of confusion happens because codicils get shuffled up. One might get lost along the way. They can cause a lot of confusion and dispute. If done properly, they can be a useful tool. Right. So hopefully, Claire, that answers that particular question. But yeah, if they're going to be done, they should be done by a qualified solicitor, preferably member of the trust Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners.
Oliver, you saying that reminds me, when I was a legal secretary, I used to have to sew up the wills down the side.
Yeah. And the codicils wouldn't be sewn into them. They'd be separate, so they could get separated. Yeah, there are still occasionally firms that sew the wills. We use tamper resistant rivets instead of staples, but anything attaching those pages together, anything not attached can get lost. Right. So I'm kind of running to the edge of acceptable timekeeping. Pushbacks and pitfalls. The first thing I'd like to encourage, if somebody comes back with concern, is listening and finding out exactly what it is. And when people express their concerns around it being too complicated, when people say out loud and actually break down for themselves what's going on, they might get a breakthrough, and then they might be able to turn their intention to leave that gift into a reality by going ahead and making that will, and maybe overcoming that reluctance to confront their immortality, which might be the real complicated thing. So be empowered to listen to what they want to say. These are valuable conversations. They're incredible conversations, and it just helps them along that process of being someone intending someone with a pledge. Time, again, is that listen? Is that the time to think about what they need, or is that the time to actually sit down and do it? It can take time if you need to go and see a solicitor face to face. Not as much as you think. The heavy lifting is all done by the legal service provider when people know what it is that they want to do, and they know who they want to look after their estate, what gifts they want to give, and possibly, what tune they want to be played at their funeral if they're hung up on funeral wishes. And a final thing is if somebody says they don't know what to do, if they're doing nothing is the same as doing something. not having a will or having an out-of-date will is the same as opting into the rules of intestacy, which are the government set out guidelines on what happens to an estate if there's no will in place. It gets split between family up to a certain extent. If no family within that, then I think it's a second cousins or something, if none can be found, it all goes to the state. Choosing not to have a will is choosing to follow the rules of intestacy and the worry of it going to HMRC rather than to causes or people you actually care about. So that is this bringing the session to a close. What outcomes do we hope you're going away with before we break for questions? Is understanding the task of making a will. What is it? What goes into it? At very high level. There is no rocket science to it. It is a technical legal task which should be done by legal professionals and overseen by solicitors, trust and estate planners and other legal professionals. If people have pushbacks, they're really interesting conversations, and sometimes people expressing their concerns will allow them to resolve those concerns, and over a period of, I don't know, minutes, hours, days, months, go along that process to turning their intention to leave a gift in their will into a reality. You are only having these conversations with people when you know that they want to leave a gift in their will to you. And where appropriate, signpost, like Claire said, with the National Free Wills Network or to Make a Will Online, through to the Your Gifts and Wills page, provide an appropriate signpost if it's the right thing to do at that time for that supporter. So that is that. Any questions about anything that we have covered today?
We do have a question in the chat from Donna.
Super.
And she says, how would you respond to a supporter who verbally pledges to give a large amount in a will, but you have concerns on their vulnerability?
Capacity is a really important area. If somebody lacks testamentary capacity, that's the ability to know who is in their family, understand who would expect to inherit. If they lack the ability to understand what's in their estate, if they can't in broad terms say, oh, I own a house and I've got savings and this, that and the other, and very rough amounts, and if they don't know who might expect to inherit under their will, and if they're not remembering somebody who might expect to inherit, like a spouse, child, grandchild, why they're not remembering that person, then there's a real worry there. If somebody says something verbally, it is a good conversation, and continue the conversation. That is somebody with an intent to become a pledger. If they have capacity, then that's a question for their legal service provider. Point them in the direction of a traditional solicitor, a family solicitor, National Free Wills Network. If they use Make a Will Online, we are unique in having access to Capacity Vault for all supporters, and that gets a digital snapshot of their mental capacity at the time they make the will. Now, that snapshot cuts both ways. We get all the evidence court needs in case that will is ever challenged, and if there's a challenge, we provide that. And if they have capacity, which is what happens in almost all of the circumstances when people are able to make a will, they have capacity, there's proof that they had testamentary capacity when they made the will. If they don't have capacity, there's also proof of that if they go through the Capacity Vault process. But best guide, best signpost for them might be to be able to sit down with a traditional solicitor on the National Free Wills Network or one of the other face-to-face free wills process, weeks process type things. Does that answer your question, Donna? I've got a hand up. I'm going to take that as a yes. Are there any other questions before we? I think we've already got time for one more.
There there is another question. It says, from, I think it's from Donna again, can someone leave a pension in a will?
Really good question. And it depends on what is in the pension documentation. Same goes for insurance. A lot of the time, people will leave a will on their pension or on their life insurance name the beneficiaries, and a lot of the time the provider will pay directly to the beneficiaries without it going through someone's estate. There's all sorts of reasons for doing that. One is delays at the probate registry at the moment, as anyone who does any estate administration at the moment will know, running to tens of weeks. Added to that, the usual 1, 2, 3 months to gather all the information for the probate application. You can get the life insurance really quickly on provision of the death certificate, and it goes to the beneficiaries. Same for pensions. If the pension or life insurance requires it to go into the estate, then yes, at that point you put it in. First question isn't going to be to the lawyer, because the lawyer won't necessarily have access to those documentations. The first step is to speak with the provider and say, hey, do I need to put this into my will? And if you don't, then don't. Look, I'm going to hand back over to Marie. I just want to say thank you very much indeed for all your time. Hopefully this session will have demystified some of the terms and what goes into a will, set out the basics and the really very achievable minimums of what information supporters need in order to make a valid will, and allowed you to think about some of the pushbacks, and also empowered you to listen to supporters when they come up with those concerns, with those worries, with those reasons for their delays. Marie, over to you.
Great. Yeah, so we've got some nice messages in the chat saying thank you for a useful session. So I'll be emailing around the resources to you at the beginning of next week, and they'll be posted on our Legacy Loop resources page too. Don't forget, if you can join us next month for the AI session, that will be lovely. And don't forget that I'm your resource, so feel free to call or email me if you need any assistance or guidance. And also that we're happy to be part of any of your internal engagement sessions to help out, you know, on the importance of gifts in wills. And if you've got any new starters in your teams that need an overview, then I'm happy to schedule that in for you as well. But lovely to see you all. And we'll see you next month. And have a nice Easter.
Have a very good Easter
Thank
break,
you.
everybody. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Very much,
Thank-
everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Super. Well, thanks very much indeed, Marie. Thanks, Sarah. Shall I grab you on the chat in just a sec?
Yeah. Okay.
Super.
Yep, take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.